Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to Sister Wives with Mary Jane K. Today I'm doing a viewer requested commentary for a viewer of mine, Been There. Been There always leaves really in-depth insights that are very intelligent and thoughtful and articulate in her comments, and I appreciate them tremendously. Been There has asked me to give my commentary on the leaked Amber Heard and Johnny Depp audio. And I'm going to oblige her on this beautiful Saturday morning. I must confess, I really don't follow entertainment or gossip or celebrities too much. It's not really something I concern myself with or keep up with because, to be honest, it really doesn't matter to me. Obviously, I know who Johnny Depp is and I know who Amber Heard is, of course. I've seen parts of Amber's deposition a while ago. To be honest, the impression I got was that she seemed manipulative and disingenuous. I don't know the couple's whole history. I know there was DV going on for sure, allegedly. And I believe that Amber was suggesting that allegedly Johnny was the aggressor when she was actually the aggressor allegedly. I really don't know all the details at all. I know that there was an issue with their dogs in Australia, I guess. I don't really know the full details. I don't even know that I want to know. I don't know if they both participate in the alleged abuse or if she is actually the main aggressor. But her vibe in the deposition from a while ago gave me a vibe that she wasn't necessarily being authentic, and she seemed like she had the propensity to be manipulative and like she had a lot of resentment within her, and possibly she could be abusive. That said, I don't know these people and I really don't follow them in the news. I don't know if Johnny Depp contributes or if he is solely a victim of abuse. All I am going to be commenting on is just what I hear in this leaked audio. And I have very limited knowledge about them as a couple. Again, I don't follow entertainment news. It just doesn't interest me. This leaked audio that I'm going to be commenting on, it can be found on YouTube many places. Where I got this 46-minute and some seconds recording is from a YouTube channel called Crime Talk. I'm not going to play the audio on my channel at all, but if you're interested in listening to that audio, you can on Crime Talk or Crime Talks. I am listening to the full 46 or so minute call. My commentary is not going to be taking into account any of their past history or anything in the news, and I am really not too familiar with every detail that's come out other than briefly watching some of Amber Heard's deposition from years ago, and it was a while ago. So I am not saying that I am right about my assessment. I'm kind of going to go into this blindly, and I was going to research them, but I really didn't want to research them and then have that cloud my impressions. So I am just listening to this leaked audio for the first time, and again, I'm not going to be playing it because it's very triggering. I will just give my thoughts and commentary on what I hear, and I will go over line by line what was said and what I think about it. And this, again, is requested by viewer Been There. I hope that I do it justice. I have a feeling it might be triggering. It is very triggering. It did get under my skin and it did zap my energy, and I had to listen to it in parts. So for any of you that might feel uncomfortable with anything regarding anything abusive or DV related, please take care or feel free to skip this one if you feel like it's going to bring up anxiety or any past history or trigger you in any kind of way. And again, I am not a shrink, so I get that sometimes you can hear something and it can bring up old past stuff and you get in this funk. And I really don't want that for any of my viewers or listeners or subscribers at all. I have never heard this before I listened to it now. And I know that it's an old audio. But again, I don't follow celebrities. I think that celebrities are people who eat and shit and put their pants on one leg at a time, just like everyone else. I don't see them as special or magical or superior to the homeless guy on the street corner. They just got lucky in life, and it doesn't make them special. And they have the same exact issues and problems as everyone else, if not more. Yes, they have all that money in their bank accounts, but carefully consider the cost and the price that they pay for that. It seems like they get it easy living their dream, but they, for the rest of their life, have to be on all the time. Anytime they step out of their house, everyone knows who they are and they perceive these people that are celebrities, quote unquote, as larger than life. And they have to stop and smile and sign this and be careful to always be on and project a specific image. And they are butchered if they ever put a foot wrong publicly, as if they don't have the same human emotions and feelings and vulnerabilities as everyone else. I can tell you from personal experience that money may make life easier, but it doesn't bring happiness. Fame is not something I would ever want. To me, I'd feel it was horrible. You never get anonymity ever for the rest of your life. You can't grab a coffee or go for a walk. You have to stop and smile and talk to strangers. People snap pictures of you. People feel entitled to you because you are a celebrity. To me, it sounds like absolute hell. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I would never want it myself. Also, one more thing I want to point out is women can be the abusers and aggressors of violence and in DV situations. I've personally seen that myself in my personal life. Women, and it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It could be someone in your family. Women are just as capable as men to be capable of violence. And that is something that I have personally experienced in my life. It can be in a familial relationship, not just in a romantic relationship where that can happen. And men can be the victims of DV or abuse at the hands of a woman. A woman can abuse another woman, perhaps their daughter or their niece or their partner. A man can abuse another man, or a woman, whether in a romantic relationship or in a familial one. I just want to point out that women can also perpetrate abuse on men and women as well. I know the man is more commonly the abuser, yes, but a man can just as easily be a victim to a woman. Women can also be the aggressors towards other women as well. So I just, before I get into this, want to point that out. Okay, let's get into it. So Johnny is saying, I thought we made a game plan, and Hurt is saying, you said we'd make a list, but you don't. She says the trust is gone in the relationship because Johnny keeps splitting. Now, was such a pet peeve of mine. The whole time, she calls Johnny, if he ever leaves the room, to de-escalate during a fight or to avoid being on the other end of abuse or alleged violence. She always calls it splitting. She says he's splitting rather than saying he leaves. So that's what she's referring to. But anyway, she says the trust is gone in the relationship because Johnny keeps splitting. Johnny says he isn't going to be in a physical altercation with her, so basically he leaves to avoid physical altercations. He says she hit him last night. He left because she hit him. She asks, what about the other times you left? She tells Johnny to come on, that he can't act like him leaving is about the physical altercations. She says it's not about that. So far, to me, it sounds like she loses it and gets violent, allegedly, and he knows her pattern and he doesn't want to be involved in DV, so he just leaves when she gets like that, as he should. I would leave too, and if I saw my partner escalating, knowing what is coming next is a slap to my face, I will leave. I will know that there will be no healthy communication and compromise that will be taking place when someone is in such a raised state of emotion, and that the other person isn't going to be in a healthy mental state where they will have the ability to disassociate from their emotions and rationalize and have effective communication with me. So of course I would leave. I wouldn't stick around to possibly get hit or slapped or punched. One thing I want to say here, and again, I am no shrink, but from my personal life experience, one thing that I can say, just as a person who has experienced some of these types of things, is if you see the pattern and the person is escalating and you know what's coming, it is best to distance yourself. And if you yourself feel triggered or angry, every human being knows, they know when they see red. They know when they're in that state where they're going to pop off, when they're getting angry, so angry that they know they're not going to be in control. When your mind is escalated and you're at that place in your emotions and you aren't able to separate your emotions and how you feel from rational thought, there are moments before you reach that level 10 anger where you know you're not going to be in control, where you can feel yourself losing control. You can be conscious of that and you can feel yourself headed to a toxic place, and you can stop and disconnect and say, okay, I'm just going to take a minute every time I could feel that I'm reaching this place. Take time for yourself. and continue the conversation later when you're not in that state, when you can actually effectively communicate and compromise and rationalize. In that state, no one is going to be productive. And the only thing that will come out of it is toxicity, and that will be inevitable. It's okay to be angry, and everyone knows and everyone can identify when they are at a point where they need to stop. And when you feel so much anger that you don't feel in control of yourself, you know that you can stop. You can continue later. You can hit pause. You can leave the situation. There is absolutely no need to escalate it. Most people know when that is consciously. They know when it is. And everyone has the power in their hands and the ability to stop when they feel themselves getting angry and angry and angry. Everyone knows when that point is, and everyone can stop. You just have to choose to. You have to understand whatever emotions that you are feeling, that's a temporary thing. And you can press pause and get yourself back to a good and healthy place, and you can continue the conversation later. If you feel anger, recognize it. It's fine to feel anger, but when it's headed to the red zone, be conscious enough to hit pause and know that these are temporary emotions. And if expressing your emotions means hitting someone, slapping someone, throwing shit, getting physical, any type of violence, any type of verbal abuse or anything like that, whatever it is, it's not worth it. And as a human being, you can learn to separate yourself from those temporary emotions, or you can allow your emotions to rule you. But if you are with someone who is like that, who doesn't have the ability to stop, and it is constant triggering and regular violence and escalating to the red zone, and then going down and then going back up on repeat in cycles, recognize that this isn't for you. And the best thing you can ever do is walk away from it, because it's not healthy. I believe so far, just a minute in, that Amber is trying to make it seem like this is all Johnny's fault, that he leaves, and she refuses to acknowledge that he is leaving to avoid violence, to avoid abuse, allegedly at her hands. That so seems to be initiated by her. I have a feeling as this audio continues that she will try to gloss over the violence and how she deals with him and try and pin it on Johnny like it's his fault for her getting abusive. And in fact, I was right, because I finished the audio today and she actually did do that. So it really wouldn't surprise me, but we'll see. Amber tells Johnny not to act like he leaves because she hits him. He asks why he splits. And I really don't understand why she keeps calling leaving splitting, but okay. And he says when they were on the plane, he couldn't split because there was some type of fight and altercation apparently on a plane, and he couldn't split. Amber says, no, he can't. And she tries to justify her initiating violence on him by saying, and you hit back, so don't act like you don't participate. If someone hits another person, man or woman, and they feel that they need to defend themselves, I don't really consider that they're participating if they're defending themselves and they have no other choice. Johnny clarifies. He says he pushed her, meaning he pushed her away after she hit him. I can't say whether Johnny should or shouldn't have done that action, but if she hit him first and he felt the need to just push her away from him, it seems warranted in my opinion. I understand if women hit men, the men aren't supposed to engage. But if a woman is punching on a man aggressively or hitting him in the face aggressively, and the man doesn't want to be violent back but wants to also protect himself, I don't see a push away as completely out of line. Protection is a human instinct, whether you're a man or a woman. Should he sit and allow himself to be hit repeatedly with his hands behind his back? Now, he didn't hit her, he pushed her. I wasn't there to see this, and I wouldn't want to be, but it doesn't sound like he was violent back. To me, it sounds like he was trying to keep her off of him with a push. I'm not saying I condone any of it, but I won't blame him for pushing someone who initiated physical violence in an enclosed space. So Amber hit Johnny, allegedly, and then she tried to allege that he hit her back, and he clarifies he pushed her. Amber says she isn't going to get into the details of that fight. In my opinion, probably she knows she hit him and he pushed her off defensively, not wanting to be violent, but also rightfully wanting to protect himself. She tried to suggest he hit her back, so she acknowledges she initiated the DV in this instance because she says he hit her back. So she initiated it. And when Johnny tells her, no, I pushed you, she then deflects and doesn't want to get into details, because if she gets into details, she knows it will be bad on her and she will have trouble reframing the situation to suit her. So she is telling Johnny, let's not get into the details. Notice when he corrects her saying he hit her back, he said, I pushed you. He corrected her. She didn't push back on that because it's the truth, most likely, and she dropped it, saying she won't get into details at that point. She then says, you and I both know that you split when there is no physical violence. She says he will leave even at the very beginning of fights these days, and if he leaves and goes into a different room and doesn't actually leave the house, it does nothing but perpetuate the fight. She asks Johnny, really, you're going to split on me? How do you feel when I leave you? Johnny says he went to the other room, and she says getting another room in a hotel is the same thing. He texts, I'm guessing his assistants, some men were named, to get him another room in Toronto after some type of fight or altercation. And she says it's chronic, it happens all the time. Okay, so she seems to blame Johnny for leaving the situation when they fight, and she initiates violence allegedly, and she now is complaining that he leaves even at the beginning of fights. I wonder why. She says it continues the fighting when he is in the same home as her, but just in another room, as if Johnny exiting the situation to calm down and de-escalate, and probably to protect himself when he knows what's coming is something bad and shameful and wrong that is causing the fight. She complains about him getting a separate hotel room or leaving even in the beginning of fights, because him leaving fixes nothing. It just continues the fight. In my opinion, she wants to deflect the blame on Johnny. Johnny seems like he's mature. He can tell when Amber is going to pop off. Maybe he feels unsafe, or he knows they won't be able to really communicate effectively and rationally and fix things when Amber is escalated to that degree. So he walks away. Being wisely, nothing good will happen if this continues, if he stays in her space. It will be toxic, and in fact, he might actually be taking a hit to the face. So when he knows nothing productive will come of it, he goes to a separate space, whether it's another room in the house or a separate hotel room. He probably sees the pattern, and he knows if Amber is so angry, she will possibly allegedly resort to violence, and that the fight isn't going to resolve. There will be no productive communication or resolution that will be reached at this point, and he knows it's toxic. He leaves her space, or he splits, as she puts it so oddly. He should split. Good for him, in my opinion. He knows the only thing he will get is someone angry and irrational who might very likely escalate to violence, allegedly, and that he won't be heard, nothing productive will happen, and there will be no effective communication or resolution. So he leaves, and he should leave and take space. It's mature and the right thing to do, in my opinion. Me personally, I could never stay with a person like this. At the first sign of anything even slightly like this, I'd be gone, because I don't put my happiness and worth on being with anyone. It's actually more stress and less joy and a hell of a lot of compromise. So if I saw any sign that a person was abusive or toxic or not at my level emotionally or maturity-wise, I wouldn't want them around me, and I definitely wouldn't want to develop any type of relationship, let alone a deep one at all. Now, anyways, Amber seems to blame Johnny like the fights are perpetual and he leaves to avoid seeing the fight through, so nothing gets resolved. That's her erroneous perspective, in my opinion. She refuses to believe and understand that Johnny is leaving, or splitting as she calls it, because he knows nothing will be resolved if he stays. In fact, he might get hit. It will be toxic and heated and spin, and he will be on the receiving end of possible abuse, allegedly. He knows that the fight won't resolve. There will just be another, even if he stays in the fight and in the room to see it to the end, nothing will be resolved. It's a cycle that will continue. So he just leaves the room. He wants to feel safe. He wants peace and calm and peace of mind, most likely. I'm sure he probably would love to have a rational conversation with his wife without the toxicity, but he knows it's impossible, so he walks away, as he should. In the beginning, he probably gave into this cycle of giving into her, but once it kept going, he probably understood he can't please her. She will always find something, and he no longer wants to participate in it, and no one to tolerate violence or abuse or a person who resorts to violence and emotional terrorism up and down to try and always have their way and always be the one with more control. Johnny can probably identify the pattern now clearly, so now he doesn't sit and wait for the escalation to violence. He sees the fight cycle starting. He can tell that she's activated, so he walks away before it starts, and she is pissed she can't manipulate him if he walks away. This is pure speculation on my part, by the way, and just my opinion from the audio. I don't know, and I'm not a shrink. Again, I'm always going to highlight, I am not a shrink. But I know life and I know relationships and I know the dynamics of different personality types and the cycle of abuse well. I could be wrong. I don't know. This is just my take. Again, knowing very little about these two and all the relationship history between them because, again, I don't follow celebrity news at all. Like I mentioned, I did see her deposition and the vibe I got was that something was rotten in Denmark. But I never followed these two, and I really don't know the details of everything that went on between them, and I have a very limited general idea going into this. Amber says when Johnny got a separate hotel room, he will even get dressed just to get another room. I think she's incensed that he is willing to make the effort of getting dressed just to go to the trouble to get his own room, like he wants a room that bad. If he was not dressed and ready to be out and about, like that he would get dressed and get ready to be out and about in public just to get another hotel room. He says she was screaming at him. She says she won't validate her actions last night. She feels bad. Johnny says there was screaming in Toronto. She says she did not start screaming until he said all of this shit. She says, you poke an animal enough and it is eventually going to, no matter how friendly it is. Amber insists, I have not done this to you. I have not said these things to you. I have not started to fight by saying, I'm going to go get another room. During all of this, Johnny does try to interject here or there, but he can't get a word in. She raises her voice and tells Johnny, we are not going to sit and fight about fucking Toronto anymore, as if she's scolding him. And she is the only one allowed to communicate and express, and regardless of abusive behavior or alleged violence or verbal abuse, she is justified in some way because Johnny did what she hates most. He split. He got another hotel room, and she could no longer continue her cycle of abuse that night, and she could no longer try to continue her manipulation, allegedly, in my opinion. If he leaves, she doesn't have control. She seems like a person who thrives on fighting and who thrives on chaos, in my opinion. And it seems to me like she likes to be in control. And she also seems to have a huge ego. She deflects. She seems verbally abusive, in my opinion. She seems angry and she seems to be not at all in control of her emotions. And there is alleged violence in their relationship as well. She can get violent, in my opinion, allegedly, and at the very least, verbally abusive, in my opinion, allegedly, and it seems as though she wants to deflect. She says initially that she won't validate her behavior last night. It was wrong. And then she deflects and removes all responsibility and accountability from herself, and she puts it all on Johnny. It's all Johnny's fault. It's Johnny's fault she gets angry and she treats him as she does. The cycle of perpetual fighting is also Johnny's fault because Johnny leaves. So the fight never gets resolved. And that's why they're always fighting, in her view. If Johnny stays, by the way, obviously it won't get resolved either. Because either way, there will always be fighting upon fighting. But if Johnny stays, it's likely he will be on the receiving end of a slap or a hit or a punch, allegedly, in my opinion. It seems to me like she operates from her ego and that she has narcissistic tendencies at the very least, in my opinion, like a few narcissistic tendencies, if not more, in my opinion. She refuses to take accountability. She seems to only think from the perspective of herself, her point of view, without being able to empathize or sympathize or have compassion for the other person. She seems to justify and validate her behavior even though she says she won't validate it and she knows it's bad and she is sorry. She justifies her behavior by saying it's Johnny's fault because he split, and he always splits when they fight, leading to the continuous fighting. So it's his fault she got so upset or was abusive allegedly. It's not her fault. He splits, so she gets mad. She knows it's bad, but it won't happen if he doesn't split. So the fault is on him in her mind. Then she says, we are not going to fight about Toronto anymore, angrily, yelling, putting her foot down that this conversation is over. It doesn't feel like she views Johnny as her husband who is equal to her, that she respects and who she gives equal say to and who she will compromise for. What he thinks doesn't seem to matter to Amber. How he feels doesn't seem to matter to Amber. To me, in my opinion, it seems like she sees herself as superior to him, and she tries to paint herself as the victim deflecting to him because he splits. She doesn't wonder if maybe why he splits, as she puts it, is because he feels unsafe and he knows it's toxic, and she isn't going to think and respond rationally when she's in that state, even if he says his piece. He knows he won't be heard, like talking to a wall, and if he stays, the consequence might even be being on the receiving end of physical violence. She then yells more. She says, guess what? She let it go. She is not talking about Toronto. He says, send me the tapes. She says she can move, she can whisper it, she can write it, but guess what? She's not saying another effing word about Toronto. She is sick and tired of fighting about old fights. She says, this is not about a fight. She says, it's broad. This is a broad thing, so much bigger than one singular fight, she's saying. She tells Johnny, if I'm telling you you get dressed, you split at the top of the fight, and you never try and work it out. She says he never fights for her. He never comes to her. He never self-calms. He never self-soothes. Wait, he is trying to self-calm and self-soothe when he splits, though, in my opinion. She continues that he's never the one to throw the olive branch, and she is sick and tired of it. By the way, it's extend the olive branch, meaning like peace. The phrase is extending the olive branch. Throwing an olive branch would probably mean the opposite of extending it. It's funny how what she meant to say is that he never tries to be the first to go to her and make peace, and that would mean extending the olive branch, which is what she meant. But she gets it wrong, saying throw the olive branch, which would mean the opposite of a peace offering. So I find that to be funny. I chuckled a little bit. Amber says she is sick and tired of it and it needs to change. She says he can say to her, I can't meet the demands. I can't do it. Or he can fucking promise her so she has a modicum of safety and she feels a modicum of respect and a sliver of he is in this, whether it is good or bad, whether it is good or bad, down and up, lows and highs, tough and easy. And he says back to her, you've got the tapes. Let me hear them. Send me the fucking recordings. Text them to me. She says she will. She's dramatic. She says, I don't know how else to say I will to you about sending the tapes. She says she hasn't sent them yet because they have not been well. They have not been good. I don't exactly know what these tapes are, but I think that what they do is they record themselves. So I think it's tapes of all their fights, basically. She says when she moves out, if she moves out, he can have them and he can relish them. She says he won't like what he hears and it won't make him happy. But you hear what I'm telling you? She says it was after Toronto. Johnny says, yeah, it's when we came back here. She says she has been on the road with him since Australia and she has been at his side. Johnny says, we were on our honeymoon, so I hope you were by my side. And she says she isn't talking about just the honeymoon. She is talking about many months. It wasn't all the honeymoon, and she has been at his side through it all. And he asked, why did she come to Rio? And she answered him. She says she would love for it to be better, and she has no fucking consistency, no safety, no security. The relationship and herself is something he doesn't fight for or stand up for, and it's something he always runs from when it's tough. She says she is telling him she needs more, that they didn't say vows. He didn't make vows in that way, but now is the fucking time, and she needs to know if he is going to be there. She wants promises, and she told him at the beginning of this conversation, she needs promises he is going to fucking be there. She needs promises that this is important to him. Not when it's easy, when it's hard too. That this is something he fights for, that's sacred, that neither of them can throw out every fight. She can't be the only one to hold all the promises. She was in Toronto and it fucked her over. She can't be the only one. And he can't be the only one. Amber says if she split on Johnny all those times, she thought about it. She would not be here. She stayed, and it's tougher, and that's stronger. She is stronger. She says it's easy to run. It's easy to run away from problems and to take that out and say that's the safest way out. She says she is not saying they should get into physical altercations. She never wants to be in that. Never. But if every time Johnny doesn't like what she says and he fucking runs away, they will never work out anything. She tells Johnny, you can't run away every fight. You can't. She tells Johnny it's easy, but it's not brave. It's not strong. It's harder to say to somebody, I want to work this out. I want to face what I have. I want to face what you have. I want to work it out with you. She says he's not working it out. He's running away. And then he makes her be the bigger person every single time and come to him. And she knocks on the door and comes to this house and says, hey, we're married. It's supposed to be sacred. Calm down. Calm down. Johnny doesn't get to interject much. It seems like she's reading from a never-ending monologue, but he says he made her at this point. That's a little arrogant to say, but technically, if she wasn't married to an A-lister, she would not have the status that she does, and she is nowhere near Johnny Depp level celebrity status. But because they are married, some of that hoopla and some of his celebrity elevates her. The last movie I remember her in is I don't know what, to be honest. Maybe Pineapple Express or the thriller Stepdad, or she had a small role in Zombieland. And I'm sure she's been in other movies too, but she's no like A-list celebrity at the level of like Johnny Depp or Angelina or Brad. So I'm sure she's been in other stuff, but I'm guessing it's nothing Oscar worthy. It is true what he said, of course, but also it is a little arrogant. But he did technically help her career, I'm sure. She says he made her by default. Then she goes back to her same narrative. She says he is never the one to do it. As she's the one. She's the one to do it every time. And it means she is the bigger person every time. It means she has to be the strong one. It means every time she has to fight for their relationship and he gets to be lazy and cowardly. Johnny is able to get a word in here. He asks Amber, then what are you here for? What do you need me for? She says once again, she is fighting for the relationship. He says, with a guy you don't fucking trust or like? Why? And she says she did not say she didn't like him. She loves him. He is her favorite person in the world. He says he doesn't see how he could be. How could that be? He says she's sorry that he feels that way. In my opinion, when you're sorry about something, that means you're taking accountability for the behaviors or actions or things that you do that make the other person feel that way. You don't just tell the other person, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. That's not a real apology, and that's very dismissive. You own up to the things that you've done to make the person feel that way. You acknowledge them, you own them, and then you change them if that's the case. But instead she just says, oh, I'm sorry that you feel that way. That's not a real apology, obviously. Asks Johnny, remember what I said in the beginning? That you are my favorite person in the whole world? She says he is the most magnetic, shiny, beautiful, interesting, dynamic person she has ever met in her life. And it would be so easy to walk away from this bratty thing that he does. He says she said he was untrustworthy. She asks if he heard what she just said. She says she said that she can't trust, but it doesn't mean that he is untrustworthy. It means that they have created a situation and she's telling him what he does to create it too. She tells Johnny, we've created a situation in which trust can't grow, like it's trampled every single time. They need a marriage. That's why she told him at the beginning of this conversation that she knows he got married for security and safety, and she did too. They didn't get married because it was something they were just doing because it was something he could walk away from. They wanted to stay a foundation, and she asks, no? Johnny says, I wanted to make you my wife, yes. She says he could just have had her as his girlfriend if he didn't want the foundation. And he told her, and maybe he goes back on it now. And she says, if you do, Fine, okay, lie about that. But you told me you wanted a foundation and the security you wanted, the safety. You liked the foundation. At the beginning, you said, I really like having that. It feels safe. He tries to interject. She tells him, don't argue. Believe me when I say it now. He says that he's not arguing. She dismissively says, yeah, but you had to pick it apart. He wasn't even allowed a word in edgewise. Who picked it apart? Was it the voices in her head? He didn't even say anything to pick anything apart. She basically did a freaking 10 minutes long monologue with him barely saying anything. So I don't know who picked it apart. No one picked anything apart unless she's hearing voices in her head. She has let him say one word for every 1,000 from her, like a nonstop monologue in a one-man show. He responds saying, because he loved her, he wanted to make her his wife, that's picking it apart. And if that's picking it apart, and she says, no. He asks, then how did I pick it apart? She says she doesn't want to do this. She doesn't want to fight about a fight. Honestly, I had to blaze medicinally to get through all of this. If I was these people's gardener or housekeeper or assistant, I need joints or like a beer or something all day long, or my hair would fall out from the stress and the frustration of hearing this type of communication and this type of conversation. I want to claw my eyes out and pray for hearing loss. No, obviously, and I don't want to be insensitive. Obviously, I was just being sarcastic. Someone very close to me actually has hearing aids, and when she doesn't like what's going on and she doesn't want to hear it, what she does is she just shuts off her hearing aids and she doesn't hear a thing. And I was thinking how she would probably do that hearing these two. So that's why I made that comment, actually. At a time like this, the option to have a remote and mute would be amazing. If this is how their life is, how do they get through it? I mean, this is absolute torture. It's excruciating, nails on a chalkboard, excruciating. Wow. You can have all the money in the world and be absolutely miserable living in the muck and the mire. This is insane. It is insane. She says she doesn't want to fight over semantics. And Johnny says, and I love this question, to be honest. He asks, how come when I come up with a point, you can't answer it? Suddenly, you don't want to answer it. Yes, Johnny. He's the more logical of the two. He's actually rational and logical. How come when I come up with a point, you can't answer it? Suddenly, you don't want to answer it. She asks, what am I not answering? Because I don't want to start a fight about this new thing. She says no, she doesn't want to. She said he wanted safety and security, and he stopped her. He interrupted her there. He says he didn't interrupt her. She asked him. She says she meant he interjected. He said not. She asked him. She asks, how about that? See, I answered you. I addressed what you're saying now. She didn't. She deflected into semantics that have nothing to do with responding to what Johnny asked her. And she did this to create a distraction, to deflect without ever answering and then saying she did when she never did address what he asked her at all whatsoever. She asks to please not fight about that. Johnny says he said because he loves her. And she corrects him that before he said loved. And he did say loved, but to be honest, how can it be love present tense in a situation like this? I really don't blame him. Johnny explains they were talking about an event in past tense. So if he used loved instead of love present tense, he apologizes. It doesn't mean he doesn't love her now. He asks Amber to try. He says, let's both try. If there's anger or something fucking really, really poking us in the ass, let's try not to fucking fight. Try to address it without jumping down each other's throats. Because all that is going to do is build a mountain of resentment and some species of fucking hatred within the love and total mistrust. Because Amber says she doesn't trust him. He gets it. He's flaking with this and with that. She says she didn't say she mistrusts him as a person. She doesn't trust the marriage. She doesn't trust him. She doesn't feel safe with it because he always fucking bails on it. He starts saying, well, he doesn't know. And she goes on cutting him off. She doesn't even let him finish his thought. She says she wants the trust back and he can deflect all he wants. He can say it's her fault and say, how dare she get angry at him ever? Whatever she's telling him, He says he's telling her, and he doesn't know, but sometimes he doesn't want to be there and go through this shit. He doesn't. Man, because he doesn't want to fucking fight. She says it doesn't have to be one. Let's not choose fight. He says she just said if she gets mad, she's going to scream. And she says she didn't say that that's always the case. But if she's mad, it happens. He says he knows and it happens often. She responds that if Johnny thinks she's some fucking tyrant or bully, then she says, don't effing be with me, but don't insult me by saying she is this fuck up and that she has the audacity to get mad. Johnny says she is the one saying that he is a tyrant and the bully and the guy that runs away. And she says he is the guy who runs away. He runs away every single fight. He asks, so then what are you doing with me? And she says she isn't lying about it and she already went through the conversation 5 minutes ago. She answered it already 5 minutes ago. Johnny tells her, you just said to me that I shouldn't be with you. And she said, no. She said if she's some harping bully, which is what he makes her sound like, she's constantly on him, making him feel bad. If that's what she does, and then he ignores everything, and he takes her for granted. He ignores everything she does for him. He makes her sound terrible. He talks about her in a terrible way. He doesn't fight for her. And then she says that he wants to sit here and make her sound so terrible. He asks, what do you mean I don't fight for you? And she says, you don't, it's everything I've already explained 10 minutes ago. He asks, no, you tell me I don't fight for you and I don't understand. He basically, I think, is wanting her to give clarification. She says he never ever does the work. If they are arguing about something, he never tries to get to the bottom of it and figure it out and make the peace. He wants to make it easy on himself, so he splits, meaning he leaves. She says he doesn't fight for her. He doesn't fight when there's a problem. He doesn't come to her. He doesn't make peace with her. He never extends an olive branch. He's never the bigger guy. He's never the one that's like, I'm going to put my feelings aside for a second and say, this is bigger than us. Let's stop fighting. He is never the one to come knock on her door. He takes her for granted. To that monologue, Johnny tells Amber, it's not true. It's not true. He isn't the one who throws fucking pots and whatever fucking else at him. Amber says that's different. One does not negate the other. That's irrelevant, she says. She says it's a complete non sequitur. Just because she threw pots and pans, and I'm not laughing because DV is funny. DV is never funny. I'm just like, the way that she tries to rationalize it, I'm laughing at how stupid she is, in my opinion, allegedly. Because she just makes herself look ridiculous. And I mean, she is ridiculous, and this is ridiculous. Like, the fact that two grown adults who are celebrities who could have the best life in the world spend their time throwing pots and pans. It's not funny at all. It's not funny that there is DV or that Johnny Depp is the alleged victim of this. But I just think it's ridiculous that people could have, be that blessed in life and have money and have the ability to really have a very enjoyable life and to do what they love and to be able to live off that and live well off that. And this is the type of stuff they spend their time doing. Like, blows my mind. It blows my mind that she's so angry. Like, it's not worth it. Anyways, Amber says that's different. One doesn't negate the other, and that it's irrelevant and that it's a complete non sequitur. Because she threw pots and pans, and it does not. That you don't come and knock on the door, Johnny. And then Johnny starts to speak. He's saying, I suggest you throw. And she stops him. She says she is not saying that he is putting words in his mouth and making non sequiturs. She basically talks nonsense. Like, I verbatim typed out what she said, and that's verbatim what she said. She says words, just throwing words in, making a word sandwich, and it's all like BS. Nonsensical stuff just to deflect and get time to do her argument. Anyways, he says he is giving her a situation, and she responds, no, he is trying to justify how you don't or do come to the door based on whether she throws pots and pans, and it's irrelevant. So it's irrelevant that she is throwing pots and pans at him. It doesn't matter how she treats him or what abuse or violence happens at her hands. It's his fault that he doesn't come to the door, and even violence doesn't justify that he wouldn't come to the door first. God, this is so ridiculous. I'm sorry, but it just is. So apparently she's justified in throwing pots and pans, but there is no justification that he won't go to her and apologize first and extend the olive branch for being the one that she happened to allegedly hit or throw things at or abuse in some way. Johnny says, and then she says, by the way, that it's irrelevant that she threw pots and pans. That's irrelevant, but it's a really big deal. Nothing justifies that he won't be the one to extend the olive branch. So she's upset he's not accepting abuse, alleged abuse. I mean, Johnny says no. He is justifying how she seems to think that there is this cowardice in him that runs away and he doesn't fight for her. She asks, and you are justifying that? Meaning that he feels justified that he doesn't fight for her and he runs away, and the cowardice that she perceives incorrectly in him by throwing the pots and the pans. She tries to deflect hard here. She says, okay, cool. Let's talk about everything you do wrong. And he says he is not the one who fucking did that. He doesn't fucking, and she cuts him off there, and her tone gets so resentful, seething in resentment. She responds, so that makes sense, so that's clear. Johnny says the only time he ever threw anything at her is when she fucking threw the cans at him in Australia. This is so pathetic. These people could be doing anything they want with their life. They could be on a beach somewhere having a great time. They could be acting in a movie with a script that they love, that they're very engaged with. They could travel anywhere they want. They could have as many dogs as they want. They can have their own pool. They could have a very good life. And then this is how they're spending their time, and it blows my mind. It's not worth it. Anyways, so Johnny says the only time he ever threw anything at Amber is when she fucking threw the cans at him in Australia. She asks, why are you trying to justify throwing things as to whether or not he would be willing to come to the door first? And he says, because that was fucking irrational and a violent maneuver, so a man would want to get out of there, so he doesn't get so fucking angry that he actually does pop the fucking wife. She asks, how does one inform the other? He tells her to go home and listen to the tape. He says that's what the tapes are there for. She tells him to listen to the tapes, and he says, oh, I'm going to. She isn't going to promise him that she will never get mad at him or that he will never fuck up. She knows he will. They live in a world, she says, where everyone just says yes to him and doesn't question or criticize him. Every moment is made like that. He asks her not to insult him. She says that's not the case. That's not why he's with her. She says she's honest with him. She's sorry he doesn't want to be held accountable. She gets it. He isn't sure that she is still being honest with him. He says watching her lie in front of Travis last night was really disrespectful. Now, I don't know who Travis is, but he's mentioned a little bit. Amber tells Johnny that's his problem and that this whole thing he created, so she's not going to go over every fight they have had, and she won't refight the fight, she says. He has something he is holding on to about Travis. Go fuck. Go do it. Go run away together, she says. I don't know what you're holding on to, but you have created that. And her tone is like very resentful. She says she has no part of that. She doesn't know what he fucking latched onto in his brain, which stray hairs have fucking commingled and tangled in his brain to make him feel he has really figured some sort of thing out, because it's not unusual for him. It's almost every fight. She can guarantee Johnny will find something that he can manipulate and twist. Johnny suggests, let's ask Travis tonight if you told him. And she feigns enthusiasm sarcastically, and she says, yes, tonight we'll invite Travis into a fucked up, broken ass, 3 fucking wheeled truck of a marriage. And why don't we crash it straight into the wall? Because no one knows them better than fucking Travis. Who the fuck is Travis? I want to know. And what are these tapes they both resentfully keep saying that they will watch? They have to be like filming themselves, and like tapes maybe they film for therapy purposes or something like that. I'm guessing filming their fights. It has to be that. Anyways, Johnny says Amber is just afraid the truth will come out, and she asks, what truth? And he answers that you lie. She asks, what the fuck are you talking about? I didn't fucking even have a fucking thing to lie about. She is raising her voice, like really, really, really getting very, very agitated here. She asks, what are you fucking talking about? And she says, every fucking fight, there is a new thing that Johnny has convinced himself is a lie. Johnny says, no. He told her to tell Travis what she just did. And she just fucking punched him in the fucking jaw. Did you? He asks. And she said she didn't know what Johnny was talking about when Travis asked. It never happened. She says she sees the lie and he really should run with it. She says, fuck, maybe Johnny and Travis can go do a tell-all about what investigators' data. Johnny asks Amber to stop with the attitude and he says she lied and she's an asshole. She asks, what conversation did I have with Travis? They have the big investigative study he has done. She says she is not going to fight with him about the fight they had last night. Johnny says, I was in a situation with you after you fucking got physically violent with me. Then he texted Travis and said, come up here because he didn't want anything to happen. She says, Travis to the rescue. And he says, that was the last one. She can go. That was the last insult. She says, he called her a liar. It's an insult. He says, he watched her lie. She says, you called me a liar. And he repeats, I watched you lie. I heard it. I was right there. She then screams like she's possessed, saying, you still haven't told me what lie. You haven't told me what lie it is. You know you do this every single fucking time. Johnny says, we will talk to Travis. And Amber says, she is not fucking talking to nobody. Fuck that. She tells him, you go jerk him off. I really don't care. I could care less. It's you every single time. You latch onto something when she told him she doesn't know what he is talking about and he doesn't know what he is talking about. They go over it again that he asked her to tell Travis what just happened and to tell Travis that she punched him in the fucking thing in the face. And she says he lied. She didn't touch him, by the way. He insists she punched him, says she's sorry she didn't hit him across the face in a proper slap. She was just hitting him. It was not punching him. Johnny reaffirms, you punched me. Why is she trying to minimize or justify any type of violence? Like, oh, it's a hit, not a punch. Either way, whatever the violence was, it's just as bad and wrong and toxic and inappropriate. She keeps saying the marriage is so sacred. Her husband is so sacred. If something is sacred to you, is this how you would treat them? She is now arguing hit versus punch, and she acknowledges it was her who did what she wants to argue was hitting versus punching. So she's admitted that she's done something. It's just a matter, Johnny is saying that he was punched and she's trying to downgrade it to hitting. She wants to argue now, was it hitting versus punching? Rather than taking accountability, she focuses on, yes, I did something to you. I hit you, but it wasn't a punch. Because she wants to argue hit versus punch as if it makes it less bad and to also deflect taking any accountability or blame for her behavior. So instead, she's trying to defer to arguing, no, it's a hit. In my opinion, she punched him allegedly. She knows she punched him, I believe, in my opinion, and this argument of hit versus punch is strictly to deflect from her delving into taking ownership of it and taking accountability. She again says, babe, you were not punched. Johnny tells her, don't tell me what it feels like to be punched. And she says, I know you've been in a lot of fights. You've been around a long time. He says, no, you fucking had a closed fist. She said, babe, you didn't get punched again. You got hit like this. And obviously it's not a videotape. We can't see what they're doing, but I assume she mimicked a slap. But she says she did not punch him. She did not fucking deck him. She tells him she thought she was hitting him and she doesn't know what the full motion of her hand actually was. But he is fine. He is not hurt. She did not punch him. She did not hurt him. He's fine. So because he is fine and it's a hit and not a punch, what she did is supposed to be more acceptable somehow. For a woman who blabs on and on about how sacred the marriage is to her, is it also acceptable to hit your husband and rather than accept accountability, justify it by telling your husband he's fine, it was just a hit, not anything as terrible as a punch, and he was not hurt at all? So there are no levels of acceptable violence in a sacred marriage. The marriage is so sacred that she has to be the bigger person and extend the olive branch first, and she complains he doesn't fight for her. He shouldn't be near her even, in my opinion. If her husband is so sacred to her, how does she admit she hit him? But he's fine and he's unhurt, so it was just hitting his face, not punching, and she is mad about why he goes to another room or leaves or won't be the first to go to her and make amends after fights. I wonder why. She says she did not punch him. She did not hurt him. What am I supposed to do? I'm not sitting here bitching about it. Am I? You are. That's what she tells him. I'm not the one who's sitting here bitching about it. You're the one bitching about it. She punched him allegedly rather than taking accountability. She is blaming Johnny now for complaining that he was on the receiving end of her alleged violence as if it's his fault. Johnny asks how her toes are. She tells Johnny he is a fucking baby. So now she is demeaning him for speaking up, saying he is bitching. Before now, she said he's a fucking baby. So because he is speaking up about the violence, he is a baby. And she's trying to put him down and paint him as weak and as a person who should be submissive to her, that he's a baby. She's demeaning him, saying that he bitches, that he's complaining about being on the receiving end of abuse, alleged abuse. She tells him he is such a fucking baby, raising her voice full of contempt. And he says it's because she starts physical fights. Again, she tells Johnny, you are such a baby, grow the fuck up. He says, again, because she starts physical fights. She says she did start a physical fight, and Johnny says, yes, I had to get the fuck out of there. She says, yes, you did, and you did the right thing. You did the big thing. She tells Johnny he's admirable every single time. She asks, what is your excuse when there is not a physical fight? She asks, what is your excuse then? You are still being admirable, right? Just by running away? She tells Johnny he can sit here and call her names, but he gets called a name, and what does he do? And she raises her voice, imitating Johnny, mimicking him, saying, that's the last insult. She tells him he's a baby and he is a hypocrite. I feel the reverse is true in my opinion, but okay. She says he doesn't do anything he actually does. He expects from people what he can't give them, Amber says. She says she hasn't been able to have a fight with him beyond or do any real talking because he splits anytime anything goes wrong. She feels like it's his first time talking, I think she means. She says Johnny splitting is unnecessary. It's not always that he leaves because there are blows or yelling or anything. He splits Minnie most times when she is still speaking in this volume, and not that she is throwing a hit or anything, meaning she's speaking in this volume, meaning that it's a calm volume or a normal volume or not a hostile volume. She says she knows she can change certain things that are hurting him, but she can't blame herself entirely for going straight to the fucking finish line for a sign of status yesterday. She says this has been how it's been lately since Australia. She's been on the road. She hasn't been working. She doesn't know what else she could fucking do. Johnny says since Australia, they have been on their honeymoon and they had a great time other than the fact that they had a fight on the train and that turned physical. He says then they had a fight in San Francisco, but he thought everything else was great. And she is saying she has been pondering this since Australia. She says no, all the splitting, the lack of, and she says even said this on the last tape. So her main issue is the splitting. So Johnny is explaining that in Australia, on their honeymoon, they had a great time other than the fight on the train that turned physical. Again, in an enclosed space, there was a physical altercation. Then they had a fight in San Francisco, but he thought everything was great. And then now he's learning that she's saying she's been pondering things since Australia. And she says, no, not pondering everything like the relationship. She's just pondering all the splitting, the lack of. And then she said, that she said this on the last tape, and she feels they were so good for so long when they were allowed to have fights. When they allowed themselves to say, hey, you did this, or remember when they had a little argument and it was okay, it was an argument. She doesn't know what the fuck has changed. She tells Johnny to go figure it out. She says she doesn't mean to criticize anything he does, but it's so chronic with him, the changes and the personality. It's like sometimes he gets these clear months and he's this different person, and it's wonderful. And sometimes she is struggling to stay connected with him and struggling to have 5 minutes with him, struggling to connect with him, struggling to have her friction with him, and she can't fight with him, but they are so chronic that she has to go. What has changed? What the fuck has changed? Amber asks Johnny, do you not remember how different? She says, he was so different. He allowed her, and he asks, I allowed you to what? She says, he was different. He was so present, and they were allowed to fight. They had bad arguments. She says, he has given her this time on the couch, and it's been amazing that they can actually talk. But she never feels that safe. She constantly feels like he's about to fucking split, and she doesn't want to feel like that. She says he makes her feel meaningless. He says that's when she goes to the bedroom and she asks, why wouldn't I if I know that you're about to split? She says that's what she is saying. He always splits. Johnny says he wasn't about to split. She says he always splits. She says she blames herself for her actions. He says he was laying in bed watching TV. He was just laying in bed watching TV. He is basically saying he was nowhere near leaving if he was in bed chilling watching TV. He wasn't planning on splitting, as she calls it. And she says, well, last night she fucked up. She isn't going to defend herself, but she also can't blame herself going to the finish line when that's always where he drives her. So she won't defend her actions of getting abusive, allegedly, that she excuses on Johnny always leaving. This time he was in bed watching TV. He wasn't leaving. So she can't defend herself, but she can't blame herself either. It's not her fault for getting abusive or allegedly violent because he usually drives her to the finish line, meaning violence and abuse. And it usually goes there. And when it gets to her being abusive, it's Johnny's fault for driving her there. He made her do it as if his behavior controls her actions, and she is not a human being who can control herself, who is responsible for her own behavior. It's Johnny's fault for leading her to be abusive, not her fault that she is not in control of herself, and she can't blame herself for resorting to abuse because that's where it usually goes, and typically she blames Johnny splitting as the excuse, not that it is. Obviously, him splitting at the first sign of even a negative tone or words is acceptable 100% and the right move. But she justifies her behavior wrongly with Johnny splitting this time. However, she escalated when he was there in bed watching TV. He did not split with no intention of splitting, and she can't use him splitting as an excuse for the incident this time. So she says she can't blame herself going to the finish line because he always drives her there. It's his fault. So she is admitting always that she resorts to some type of abuse or violence. She says it always goes there. It always goes to the finish line. So she's saying there's always this type of violence or this type of escalation. So she's admitting always she resorts to some type of abuse or violence, allegedly, that she calls the finish line, and that it happens always, and that Johnny drives her there. It's Johnny's fault she is abusive, not hers. Johnny is at fault for her behavior and her actions. She is not in control of herself or responsible to regulate her emotions or to control her behavior. Other people, external things, are responsible for how she behaves, and that's ridiculous. She's accountable for her actions. In my opinion, Amber is responsible as a grown adult for her own actions and behaviors and for regulating her emotions, regardless of what anyone outside her says or does. It doesn't matter. It has no bearing on how she chooses to conduct herself. And no matter how Johnny makes her feel, she is responsible for her reaction and her behavior. And alleged violence or abuse is never acceptable and never the fault of anyone but the perpetrator. She says they don't have the luxury of being a normal human couple. As soon as he gets mad, he takes off on a train. She says it's something because it's difficult, it's strong. One day he was different and it hasn't been back, Amber says. Johnny says it's the same changes that are also happening with her. It's exactly the same. Amber doesn't think that's the case. Johnny says that is the case. I believe what Johnny is trying to say is because Amber's behavior changed and has progressed, the way that he behaves towards her is different too, because she's behaving differently. So he has to adapt his behavior to her new behavior. And so it's not him that changed on her. He changed as a result of her changing the way that she conducts herself or her behavior. So Johnny says it's the same changes that are happening with her. It's exactly the same. And Amber doesn't think that's the case. And Johnny says it is the case. Amber says she has always been the larger human. She has always been able to have a communication with him. The difference is that he makes it so they cannot even communicate at all if it's anything negative. He goes, he takes off on a train and he doesn't get off. He doesn't come back around. He doesn't honor when he says just one day, a few minutes or a little time, I'll be back. He's not communicating how long he will be gone. And when he does communicate how long he will be gone, it's not, he doesn't give a specific amount of time, or if he does, he doesn't come back when he says he's going to come back. She says he doesn't assuage the anxiety and the stress that he gives her. It makes it worse with her by saying, hey, we will. People was like, you have to say, I will be back in this amount of time, more or less. And then he has to actually honor it. He has to be able to come back. And so she said, oh my God, if he can do that, that would be great. But Johnny never does it. He doesn't ever honor that. He leaves her with way more anxiety and stress and anger and resentment. But she says in Australia for a few months, he was so... Johnny says, so were you, meaning different. He says it makes a difference. He says he wasn't being attacked in Australia. So when he wasn't being attacked and she was behaving really well, the relationship was different. And he also probably behaved different with her. I just want to clarify that people is someone she's referring to. I don't know if it's a therapist or what, but this person said that he has to say, like, if he needs to leave and take space, more or less when he'll be back, and then honor that so that she can feel less anxiety or whatever. And she thought that that would be great. But apparently he never does it. And he doesn't, even if he does give her a time, he doesn't necessarily honor her. And then she's still left with the stress and anger and resentment. But that things were so good in Australia. Johnny is explaining that she was very different, and he changed his behavior when she changed hers, and that makes a difference. And he wasn't being attacked in Australia. Now here she raises her voice and she says she hasn't attacked him any different. She hasn't changed. She has not attacked him. He is a different one. He is different. She says she never attacked him. She never attacked him. She says just because she has a complaint with something he did, it's not an attack. Johnny says it becomes verbally insulting. It becomes all kinds of shit right at the get-go. And she says that is the problem, that if Johnny sees any criticism as a verbal assault, of course, they have this problem. And then the next time, God forbid, that she has a problem with something he does or to be in this situation, she's ready for it. And Johnny tells her it's not nice. He's trying to tell her to be a little bit nicer. She says, what if she is hurt? She asks if she is allowed to be hurt and to be a human. She says that's the thing. Johnny is not allowing her to be human, and then he takes her humanity from her. And she says he is telling her she isn't allowed to feel or allowed to react in order to protect him. I hardly doubt that Amber is not allowed to express her feelings and that Johnny doesn't hear her or listen to her express her feelings. He's been listening to her this whole time with it barely getting a word in. I have a feeling that she is basically, what she's doing is she's just deflecting and saying that she's not allowed anytime she basically starts getting, and she's not talking like a normal person, just giving normal, healthy criticism. She's probably being very rude, very disrespectful, verbally abusive, and that kind of a thing. And so she's saying, you don't let me be human. You don't let us fight and get to the end of it. You don't let me express myself. But the thing is, probably when she's expressing herself, it's all toxicity and it's not just her feelings and her delivering them in a respectful manner. And then she's accusing him of being like too sensitive and like taking everything as a verbal assault and being highly sensitive when that's probably not the case. She's probably actually being very verbally insulting and very verbally abusive, in my opinion. And then he tells her it's disrespectful and he leaves because he's not going to tolerate it and he knows what it will escalate to. And then she tells him, you're not allowing me to feel, when he is allowing her. He just won't take a verbal abuse or any other type of abuse from her, in my opinion, alleged abuse. So from what I gather, there was an altercation last night where he wasn't splitting and he was just home in bed watching TV, and she may have started a fight with him that may have gotten deeper, like a hands-on type of thing. And so Johnny references that. He starts talking about that. He says, last night happened because he was at Isaac's house for too long, and Isaac is next door. So he was next door for too long. He says, for what? What did we gain from this fight? From him, just the horrible fucking act of him being over at Isaac's for just too long for her. She says she did not cause this because he was over at Isaac's. She says he is lying to himself, and she says, go ahead, just lie then. Johnny asks, then why were you upset last night? She says, this did not happen because of Isaac's. This happened because they are fighting. She says, this is not about Isaac's. They actually even really talked, and they talked about that because he knows it's not about that. He knows it's bigger than that. She says, the point is, she voiced a complaint. It could be anything. He could say, baby, you did something to hurt me, which he did, and he admitted. And Johnny asks, Amber, why didn't you say that? She says he admitted that he would feel that way too. He said sorry for it. Amber says that would have been great, but she could not feel safe saying anything like that to him because she knew that his reaction will very likely be a defensive explosion and then an attack and a freak out, and he would then get up and walk away and all this stuff. So she wanted to avoid it, so she took an Ambien to try to go to sleep without having to speak to him about it, because she was really hurt that he fucking left her stranded and he didn't think about her. He didn't text her all the things that he apologized for, that he already apologized for. She asks him to do her one small favor and not take it back. And he says he's not taking it back. She says it's not about Isaac and he knows it. He asks if it's about him shouting then. She says no, it's about him not allowing her to have any problems with him or to be upset by him or mad at him or even hurt by him at all. And Johnny says if she could have just said it in a kinder way, in a nicer way, say, look, listen, I feel fucked over by what you fucking just did. Amber says if she did that, he would freak out. He says no. He would say, fucking what is it? Like what? And that she thinks he was at Isaac's too long and he said he wouldn't be that long or whatever, that he shouldn't do that. That she felt stranded, that she felt fucking left. But why are we going to fight with that? Why get mad about that with that? That's like, it's basically not something to have that big of a fight for. She says, oh my God, that's first thing he does is say he doesn't have to text her. He would be shady. There would be a fight. It would be terrible if she did that. If she did what Johnny suggested, it would be terrible. Communicating in a nice, respectful manner. He says, but there was a fight. And she says, yeah, it was. And he says, it was a fight and it should not have been. And then the Isaacs thing, him staying at his neighbor's a little bit longer than expected, was the impetus for the fight because of a lot of what Amber had said about it. And she just denied it was about Isaac a second ago. Johnny is insisting that the fight started just because he was at the next door neighbor Isaac's for longer than expected. And now Amber admits it was the impetus of the fight, which she just denied a second ago. And she has contradicted herself over and over. Amber says it was the impetus, but it was just a small example of a bigger thing. And he knows that. Johnny says, okay, so it's a bigger thing that is coming from back in Australia. Amber says no. In Australia, which I gather was supposed to be their honeymoon, they were still allowed to have fights. If they're fighting on their honeymoon in Australia, a place where most people would feel lucky to honeymoon, I might add, that says everything right there. If the honeymoon phase is not even a honeymoon phase of this relationship, then what the fuck is the point? These people sound like miserable human beings and like they're miserable together, and they have all the money in the world and all of the opportunity in the world. And it sounds like poison is eating them from the inside out, especially Amber, in my opinion. Money does not buy happiness or peace of mind or calm. I seriously have a headache from this. I'm going to have to blaze. These two are toxic together, in my opinion. I don't think Johnny is the abusive one, but I also don't think he is a happy person, even with all he is blessed with in life. If he was happy, he wouldn't ever be around a person like that or tolerate any of this. I feel bad for him. He has an amazing career, money to do anything he dreams of in life and in the world, but he just seems miserable inside, and it's depressing, honestly. I feel bad for him almost. And she has more issues, in my opinion, than the New York Times. I can't with her. She says in Australia, they were allowed to have fights. And Johnny can't sit here and tell her that if she feels things, she can't voice them to him. She says, if they say to each other, you can't get mad, you can't be hurt by the other, and really try to be a fucking fairy tale, that's not going to happen. Johnny says, of course, nobody is able to and should not hold shit in. We can go to the other person and say, look, man, I feel fucked. I feel shit. I feel this. I feel that. And then they can assess how they each feel, and then they can see what each other means. And say, I see what you mean, like I get it, or I fucking don't get it. I don't understand what you're saying, and you're wrong, and whatever. And she says, it's going to be the latter, and it's been the latter for months now, where that is his reaction, not ever admitting wrong. Wow, that's rich coming from her. Not ever doing anything wrong. Not ever. And Johnny says that's not true. She says he always goes straight to, you're wrong, fuck you kind of thing. He doesn't always say fuck you right away all the time, though. She admits that. Johnny points out that she has been saying always. And she says for months now, it's been that. She can't voice any complaints. She can't say she feels fucked over. She can't say she's hurt or she's mad at him or that he fucked up. She can't be mad or hurt at him. Nothing, because she is the bad guy. That she's always fucking up. She's always on him. She always is fucking up with everything. And he's getting mad at her for being honest with him. She says they got in a million fights where she was honest with him and she told him how she felt. Maybe if he knew he was mean with her, he would feel bad, she says. She asks, what the fuck? We had these few months where we actually could even feel things and fight, and it was an argument. Even if she is hurt, she is still trying to do it because she sees the bigger picture. She says he loses the big picture every time, and if he wants to stay married to her, he needs to figure out if he ever thinks he can. She says if he is going to lose sight of the bigger picture, only be her husband when it's easy. He will only be there for the ups, never the downs, and he is only going to be there for health, not sickness. Every time it gets hard, he loses the big picture and he can't think about anything else but breaking up, divorce, fighting, splitting, running away. She says if he can't be the one to come around sometimes and see the bigger picture and know it's not worth fighting for, if he can't do that, they need to walk away if it's not worth fighting for days. She doesn't want to walk away. She doesn't want to end this. Johnny asks if she thinks she instigates the same thing. She says she isn't talking about instigating. She's talking about ending. Johnny says she doesn't always do that. She says he is never the one to go to her and say, let's not fight anymore. He is never the one saying, come, just get into bed. Let's not go to bed mad. She says on the plane, it was her. Toronto, it was her. It's always her. Johnny says on the plane here from Rio, Amber was losing her marbles. He is the one who went to her and said, let's calm down. Please calm down. And she was blaming him because her flight was going to get in late and she would not be able to have time before her thing. She tells Johnny to think about it again, deflecting and discounting the times he goes to her first, which is what she said he never does. He provided an example that he does it and she deflected and brought up the fight from last night. This is insane. My head hurts. Anyways, She says, think about it. You ditched me last night. And she understands how shitty that got. She understands her part in it. She needs to know what they need to do differently. Johnny says it's got to be done with her heart and her mind. She asks, what do we do differently if I have a problem? And she says Johnny needs to tell her how to tell him differently if she is hurting him. He needs to let her be able to be mad. She says sometimes he's going to make her mad. She's a human. She cannot live where it's like, Johnny says the same thing goes for him then. He tells Amber she is going to have to allow him to get mad too. She says, yes, exactly. He responds, okay, but I get mad and then you start fucking yelling. And she says she doesn't have to start yelling. She starts fucking yelling when it gets fucking heightened. And she has gotten a lot better about that. She says it's only that she starts yelling when it's fucking hour 11 and they are really in it. Johnny says she hasn't gotten better about that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had 3 physical fights in the last month and a half or 2 months. He says, let's both pay attention to how we talk to each other to respect each other. She says he knows they aren't going to do that all of the time, but that they promise to each other without the rings and the divorce. Johnny says no rings, no divorce. She tells Johnny, we promise each other, please. She says she wants so bad to feel like the marriage she worked so hard to make happen is meaningful. And Johnny says he promises her. He says, don't talk about making the wedding happen. Talk about before that time they spent together, please. And she says she has those 4 years no matter what, but she fought for that wedding and they had that beautiful wedding. For what if they don't? And then she says it means something, that there's some meaning. Johnny says, yeah, it did mean something. It does mean something. He didn't get married to her to fucking have 17 more fights and it's fucking over with. He tells Amber we got married. He knew the fucking fights weren't going to stop, but he thought maybe it'll curb them a little bit if they get married. And she says she wants the security back. Amber responds that she freaks out. She freaks out and she can't make normal decisions, calm decisions, always from the heart, where she is thinking of Johnny more than herself when she thought he was splitting on her all the time and the marriage is on the rocks. Amber says she makes the same mistake about throwing their marriage around and she will not do it again. She is not going to do it again, she promises, but there is something so anxiety-provoking and scary and malicious, and it really just turns everything over when he splits all the time. She asks Johnny, please, if you really don't want to fight and you're not just trying to hurt me, which sometimes it is that, if you really, really, really love me and you do care about this, please find a good way to do less wrong. Please find a good way to do it wrong less. Be respectful. Wow, she's telling him to be respectful. She tells Johnny he can tell her that he is splitting. She needs to know that he will be able to talk about it later, because the problem is that she has is when he does not communicate, it comes into her, it's up to her, and it's a cancer in her, she says. It got worse every day when they were back from Toronto. It got worse every single day, not better. Worse until they spoke about it and they talked about it, and then it was okay. That's what she needs. She doesn't want to resent him. Johnny says he doesn't want to resent her. He doesn't want to not trust. She says he can, like he can trust her. He says no, and she says, why? Because I chased you out of an elevator in the hall? She tells him, stop doing that. She says she isn't nitpicking. She doesn't need to be focusing on something, but if it's a major thing to her, and if it's a major thing referring to him splitting, Johnny says if things get physical, we have to separate. We have to be apart from one another. Whether it's for fucking an hour or 10 hours or a fucking day, we must. He continues that there can be no physical violence. I agree with him. I think Johnny is really, at least he's being honest with what he's saying. He's trying to set boundaries. He's being rational. He's being mature. He's being very respectful. I think it's really ridiculous that she's accusing him of being the disrespectful one. I would think she is, from what we're seeing here, in my opinion. To me, it seems like, in my opinion, allegedly, Amber seems very off kilter and not in control of her actions, not able to calibrate her emotions. And then she blames other people and external things as to why she can't control her behavior. And those external people and things are to blame and her justification for why she goes off. It's never her fault. It seems like she can't control her behavior or why she resorted to anything physical. And Johnny leaves all the time because it's a constant fight and he knows what is coming and he understandably wants to avoid it. He doesn't want to be hit or punched, so he walks away to try and de-escalate. He should split. Amber says she can't promise him that she will be perfect, and she can't promise him she won't get physical with him. She says, I fucking sometimes get so mad that I lose it. And she says, I can't fucking promise you. She says she's going to do everything to change. She can't promise him, but she's going to do everything to change. She has nothing to hold on to, like the source of their marriage or commitment or stability. And she can't just get up and walk away and spend the night somewhere else. And Johnny says, obviously she can. She says, yeah, but obviously it's done. If she does that, she says that's not marriage. And Johnny says she talked about it and she knows why he left. She says she does know why he left. And Johnny says he is saying now that he won't do the same thing, that he will not do that. He will not fucking leave until some rational decision is made, because the end is the end of this fucking thing. He says if we keep going, we'll keep going. So he promises her. He hopes she can trust him. She says she doesn't want any loopholes or any of it's okay to leave or acceptable to leave or to do this or say this about splitting or breaking up or leaving. She says they should fall asleep together every night, ideally never mad, and she would love to say she could promise that, but she doesn't know if it's possible, but she'd love to strive for it. Johnny says yeah, that she wasn't ready for that last night for sure. She says she fucked up last night and she is really sorry. She says it's affecting not only her, but their marriage. It's affecting how she trusts, how she resents him, how she likes him without the fighting. It's affecting that, and it's the last thing she wants. She likes Johnny without the fighting. He tells her then don't. She says she isn't trying to rub his nose in it, but she feels sometimes that he admits something. If he acknowledges it, it will be beautiful, and then he will go back on it kind of in his vocabulary after. And then she feels like, wait a second, is he taking it back? She asks, know what I mean? Johnny says he does know what she means, but like he said before, he hasn't cornered the market on that. He says when Amber starts the fucking yelling, it fucking gets crazy, and that makes him not feel safe, for lack of a better word, within the relationship. So basically, Amber's behavior, the fucking yelling and everything else, allegedly, makes him feel not safe. He does not feel safe. He says, understanding of, oh, well, it's just nothing. But if it keeps going and it's always sort of there, then he worries about the marriage. He worries how much longer he can deal with this, how much longer Amber can deal with this. He says, fuck, man. So he has had the same trust issues. He's had the same disappointments. He's had the same. Maybe not to the degree she has, but he's had the same. He's assuming so. But when she starts fucking honking and hunting him, it's pretty... She interrupts him and tells him to call her out on it and help her when that happens. And he says he will. He will try to help her. Notice how he says when she starts yelling at him and hunting him, it feels like, so it seems to me like he's tried to walk away and she literally will follow him and hunt him down. And I think he's going to say like he basically almost feels violated or strangled, like he can't even have privacy. And so she interrupts him and tells him to call her out on it in the moment when she's that angry that she's being physical or being abusive, and to help her in that moment. And he says he will try to help her. He says if he tries to help her when he can help her and he can't help her, she should say, baby, I'm taking an hour in my fucking office. And if she wants to talk or to come get him, but otherwise he would come check on her in an hour. And Amber says that would be helpful. So basically he's suggesting that the way they cope with this is when she gets to a certain point and he calls her out, he does what she says, he stops her in that moment when she's about to get physical or when she's very verbally abusive and she's yelling and shouting and screaming at the top of her lungs, that he will try to help her and point it out. But if that doesn't work, what he would like her to do is to go to her fucking office and to take an hour and calm down. And if she wants to talk with him when she's calm, she can, or she can come get him at that point. But otherwise, if he doesn't hear from her, then he will check on her in an hour. And Amber is agreeing that that would be a helpful strategy. Maybe that would work. She promises she will try it. She will leave his room for an hour, and she promises she won't freak out if Johnny tries to do what they've just suggested. And Johnny says he just wants her to have her time to be able to calm down, or for him to be able to have his time to be able to calm down. And she says it helps to give it time. But she says if he just says he promises to resume it, she just needs to know that after they take the time that he will come back. She needs that reassurance. And Johnny suggests when they will resume the issue. Otherwise, she says she is dealing with a cancer. So she needs to know when they will need, when they will, once, when they leave and they take that time once the situation escalates, she needs to know when they will resume the issue, or otherwise it will be like she's dealing with cancer, doing something that just festers and gets worse and worse and worse. So he has to realize that in that kind of a situation, it's okay for him or her to take a few minutes, but after a certain point, it will just become worse. And she says it will make it way harder for her to reason and to rationalize the longer time that they pause in between. And she says, Kipper, I don't know who Kipper is, but Kipper can tell Johnny that he's the same way. Johnny works a very different way than she does, and so she wants to meet him in the middle. And Johnny says he does understand all that, but he also wants her to understand that there were great moments, there were high hopes, that it was just all cool. And then whatever happens, this happens, that happens. They have a spat or a fight or a fucking blow up. He just wants her to know that that way she is feeling about being unsure of them as a couple or of the marriage, or whether she can trust him to be this, or whether he can trust her and feel secure in the marriage, or feel if it's worth it. He feels very much the same as her. And she says Johnny has the added luxury that he takes for granted. She says, no offense, but he does. And he asks what he takes for granted. And she says, Johnny has the added luxury of knowing that she is there and that she means it forever because she shows up. She comes. She is the one knocking on his door. She is the one, the last one there, the one who comes to get him off the plane. She is the one who knocks on the bathroom door. She is the one that comes into the house that he has run away to. She is the one that always goes to him and says, this is worth it. And he has the added luxury that he just is taking for granted in such a big way, she says. She says he doesn't know how much that means and how much that should mean to him. He doesn't realize the value of that. He says he's only going because he thinks, fuck, we are screwed. Like when he leaves, he knows they're screwed. And he's thinking he leaves because he thinks, fuck, we're screwed and he can't live like this. So he leaves when he thinks to himself, he can't live like this. She asks Johnny, what's to stop you from doing that again? And he says, like they both said, if he walks out of the door, he walks out of the door. And that is the same thing as rims off. That's the same thing as mentioning divorce. So basically he's saying if he walks out the door, that will mean that he's done, basically. He says there is no talking unless they just want to try to be civil with one another as people who are fucking married. He hates to talk like that or even saying that kind of shit. But if he walked out again, then yes, he's walking out. He'll know what that means, and she will know that, and they will both know that he is walking out, that it's done. They'll both know what it means if he decides to walk out again. He asks if she will do the same deal, and she promises they will explore it, and they will just do the things they do a little differently in fights. Like he won't run away, and she tells him, don't walk away from me. She tells him to do it in a different way, and she promises she won't resort to the same shit. She promises. She asks, okay, and he says, okay, and thank God it's over. This was unbelievable. I think, in my opinion, just as a layman, Amber Heard is a miserable person. She has a lot of issues. I think she is very selfish. She can only think from her point of view. I think she has a control issue. I think she has narcissistic tendencies. I don't believe she loves Johnny. I do believe she has narcissistic tendencies, in my opinion. I don't believe she loves Johnny. I believe that she perpetuates a cycle of abuse and then she deflects and blames everything on him. I mean, think about how tone deaf she is. She is upset because she was throwing pots and pans at him, and she's upset that he did not decide to, after that, be the first one to try and make peace and let the marriage work, that he's saying he wants a divorce, that he's saying he can't live like this. She's not really understanding. And then she says, like, she takes accountability and then she deflects on him again. She demeans him, calling him a coward. Many times she calls him a coward baby. She's trying to make him feel like he's less than a man. And she's the one that's using violence. And then she says things like, that's not important. This is really, I mean, I don't know if he contributes to it at all or not, but it doesn't seem that way to me. What it seems like is that she's the alleged abuser and he's a victim of abuse, and that also this is a cycle, and she likes to be the one that has the most control and the most power. And she does that by manipulation, by abusive tactics, demeaning people, blaming them. She blames everyone around her for her emotions. Like she said that Johnny is the one that drives her to violence. Like it's Johnny leaving all the time or being later than she expected that leads her to violence. So it's his fault that she got behaved that way. Everything around her causes her behavior, determines her behavior. She reacts to all the people around her and everything around her, and that's the justification if she happens to behave in an abusive manner, and that's really scary in my opinion. Okay, that does it for this episode of the leaked audio of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as you could enjoy this type of toxicity, I'm just going to say. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will be out with the next episode of Sister Wives Season 2, Episode 1, Brown's Out of Hiding, I would say Friday or the weekend at the latest. See you guys soon. Bye.